Hey, security peeps, we are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. It is CISO Thursdays. I am so excited to be back because it's been a few weeks. I missed everybody. I am Renee Small, cybersecurity super recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. And we have an awesome guest today. But first, I will go to my co-host, brother from another mother, Chris Foulon.
Hi, Chris Foulon, co-host, cybersecurity consultant, career coach, and fortunate to introduce our amazing guest, Jules, today. She's back. We love when Jules comes on. She always has amazing things to say, and we're fortunate to have her back.
Exactly. Welcome, Jules.
Hello. How is everybody?
We are great. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh my God, I cooked everything. So for that reason it was exhausting, but then I also helped eat everything. So I guess that made up for it. But my mom came into town and I haven't seen her. Oh, did my screen freeze? Oh.
No, you're here.
Okay. But she hasn't been in town. I haven't seen my mother since May of 2020. So
wow.
And she hasn't seen her grandchildren. So I promptly gave them to her, and I've been
take them.
They love you. Have fun with them. I'm going this way.
Enjoy, right? I know that's what it's gonna be like when my mom shows up for Christmas.
Ooh.
So yeah, we haven't seen her since February of 2020.
Oh wow!
In person, yeah.
Where does she live, and where do you live?
So I'm outside of the DC area in Northern Virginia, and she is in New York.
Oh, see, my mom lives in New York too. She lives in New York, Brooklyn.
Oh, well, we need to talk afterwards because they might be neighbors.
She's
in Brooklyn too.
That's so cool.
Oh my God. So Michael Reeves is here. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining us. So we wanted to kick it off by talking about, there are a couple different things. Paul is here. He said, team awesome. We are so excited. I was just telling Chris and we were on our little group chat beforehand, like, we miss each other. So when 2 weeks passed, I'm like, what's going on? So we're all super excited and doubly excited to have Jules here as our guest, because when she was here, Jules, you were here like what, a year ago?
No.
Oh, wow.
Wait,
even longer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like at least 2-3 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
how long have you been doing this now?
Almost 4 years.
3.5.
Oh.
Yeah. You were like our biggest deal back then. You were our superstar. Like, wait, we got Jules.
I remember how excited I was about starting my new business. I hope I can have that same level of excitement because I was so excited. My new office, I was like on it. Now I'm like, oh God, I've been in this like 3 years. A little tired, but I'm bringing the energy today.
Yes, you are. You always do. So one of the things that we talked about having you talk about, and before we get started, a couple things. All of our guests, please, folks that are watching us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at over 1,000 YouTube subscribers. Woohoo! We want more. We're trying to get to 2,000. You know us. We try to double it every time. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the folks that are watching right now that are live, let us know where you're hanging out. How was your Thanksgiving? Put all that stuff in the chat. You know how we do. We want to know all your business. We want to know what you ate. We want to know where you live. We want to know what you did. So please put all that good stuff in the chat. So Jules was talking to Chris a couple weeks ago, and we as usual are always talking about breaking into cyber and the challenges and things like that. A couple things came up. And one of the things that came up was around, and I really wish James was on here because he was talking about this too. But Jules talked about, bringing people in, no experience, right? And training them up, and the level of the lack of loyalty, like, a couple months later, they're gone. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of aligns a little bit to, I made a post a couple weeks ago on, LinkedIn about I forget the guy's name from the Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful. I forget his actual name. He on the Shark Tank, he said, if he sees a resume and it has less than 2 years experience on it, it's immediately, or if he sees like that the person hasn't been in a job for 2 years, he immediately trashes it. Now, so it kind of all comes together because we had some discussion around that. And where, where's the line? But I really want to hear from you, Jules, because you're dealing in the cyberspace. You have your own business. You're bringing in people that are junior. And then, from a manager and leadership perspective, what is that like when they just turn over and they resign, they quit in a couple of months?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start off by saying my company, Revolution Cyber, was started for the purpose of giving people without a lot of experience an opportunity to get their foot in the door, gain the requisite experience so that they could go off and do other things. Now, so I don't have a natural issue with those who come into the field and then leave, but there's a way to do it. And I want to talk a little bit about the way to do it, but I also want to talk about the attitudes. Because I think that's really what I'm driving at is we are in the space where people like Renee, Chris, and I are convincing CISOs all the time that they should take a risk. Hire somebody who doesn't know security, bring them into the space, train them, and then they may stay with you, they may go off. But in doing so, you improve the overall quality of the talent in the industry. And that means that they're going to be giving before they can receive. And that means that most people will not want to do this. Therefore, when you have an opportunity where someone said, because I've been in those shoes, I never, before 2014, I'd never been in cyber. I was in marketing and sales. And what I did when I first got into my role was I learned everything I could about my job, my boss's job, what my company did, and really what it is I wanted to do in the future so that I could develop the skills in this role to be helpful in that new position. What I find today, and look, I don't want to have the millennial, genial, Gen Z, Gen Y conversation because y'all don't know my age and I'm not telling it to you. But what I want to say, there's a difference today in how educational institutions are preparing young people for the workforce. What I find is that maybe it's a social media thing, but everybody thinks that everything should be easy. You should come in, and if I don't immediately get it, then it's probably too hard and it's not for me. That's the attitude I'm saying so many people have that they've got to correct. If someone has agreed to pay you for work that you've never done before, and they take the risk to bring you inside their company, it is incumbent on you to get into the role and do everything possible to develop and acquire as much information as you need in order to be as valuable as possible as soon as possible. Therefore, if you're not getting what you need to get, you don't understand, you ask questions, you sit with other people, you reach out to people in the industry to gain that knowledge. But what I find a lot of times is people come in, they're like, this is hard, and then they quit. Not even just with Revolution Cyber. I've actually helped to get people into other jobs where I've leveraged my own CISO connections, and they'll get into the role. Either they'll find that someone responded back to them for a job that they had applied for that they now have, so they jump, or I find that they just go, nah, I don't want to do this. And then they come back to me and say, can you help me find something else? You can imagine in those situations that I'm not going to go out of my way to help again. And the industry is so small that you've got to make sure that you're not setting up a bad reputation for yourself before your career is even started. So there's a level of professionalism that comes with an apprenticeship or an internship. You don't have to assume that you'll be there forever, but you also can't assume that you're entitled to anything before you've delivered anything.
That's one of the things that Paul, who's a commenter of, is like, we have a nonprofit where we're working on, where we're taking individuals like with that background, making them do the training that can last anywhere from 1 to 3 months that they have to do themselves. It's free, but they're doing the training and they're showing the commitment to learning, and then going to potential companies and going, hey, we made sure that this individual really wants the SOC analyst role, like they understand it, and they didn't just pick it out of a hat, and they studied for it, and now we want to show them to you and to show them that they have the passion for it, because all too often they don't.
like real training means it's not like the cert is about taking as much information as you can in and then spitting it back out in the way that the test requires it. That typically doesn't translate into the work environment where you need to be able to then communicate it, apply it, to be able to share and collaborate around it. And those are the skill sets I'm finding that are missing quite a bit. So what I tell people is you will be hired for your skill sets on paper, but you will be retained for what it is you're bringing of value in the form of communication and ongoing continuous learning. So the tests are different. If you're getting into the door, what you use to get there isn't what's going to keep you there. And people have to be aware of that very quickly.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, every point you made is so spot on. And I part of me wonders, it's so funny because when you said Gen Y, Gen Z, every time I would hear, and somebody made a comment that said, if Jules is a day over 26, I'd be shocked. Me too.
I like you, Scott. Yeah. I'm 26.
Scott, you need a job.
26 and a day years old.
And plus one.
Plus one. But some of the points that you made, you hear about, and I'm, I'm not going to tell my age either, but I'm on the
That's true. I'm on the cusp.
I'm a little bit behind that. But, when somebody sponsors you or somebody brings you on, my mom used to always be like, you got to make that person proud. You have to be, you have to be sure. And you have to put that work in because they are taking a risk until you have your wings and you know what you're doing. And then you can command whatever it is that you can command because you know what you're doing. But in the beginning, you are supposed to do everything that Jules is saying. You are supposed to be digging into the company, understanding. And one of the things that came out of that particular article that I talked about with the 2 years, and I understand when people say, 2 years could be a long time, especially if it's just a dumpster fire place, right? You want to get out. Like, I get it. But someone made a comment and was like, it takes 3 months just to figure out if it's a dumpster fire, especially when you don't know anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Unless somebody is like berating you, like if you feel like a complete, it's personal, the actual work component of it, you're not even going to really get your legs under you and figure out how to do stuff for at a minimum 3 months.
3 months. Yep.
So, to have this attitude where it's just like, oh my God, this is hard. Like everything's hard in the beginning. I mean, I tell my little kids that, like, yeah, I suck at it. Well, you don't know what you're doing.
The goal is to keep sucking less. That's
right. Right. Like, oh, I suck at math because we would say, it's COVID. Like virtual learning was tough. I get it. You know what I mean? So now we got to ramp you back up again. But it's just like it's kind of like what you said, Jules. There's this disconnect or this there's something that's happened where folks, I think, are less likely to dig their heels in, and they sometimes use the loyalty component, but loyalty is like that's after 3 months, 6 months, things like that. Okay, like if you've been in a company for a year, I get it.
Yep.
But 3 months, 6 months, anything under a year, really, as a brand new person, that's hard.
That's unheard of. And like you said, it's got to be an exception. So Scott's question about the home lab, there was a conversation that came up.
And Jules, before you answer, let me just read it because I'd like to read these comments as they come in for people who are listening to us without watching. So Scott Jaster says, I keep hearing about setting up a home lab. Curious how much you feel that is relevant on a resume and how to present it on one.
Okay. So I was going to say, I struggle with this answer. Here's why. This idea about setting up home labs and doing all kinds of things to demonstrate your either affinity or passion for it, it's a double-edged sword. And the reason why is sometimes you appear almost too passionate or dedicated for the junior role. So I've seen it where, not in our company, but when I've helped others, and they talk about, they've been going to cons for years, they've been doing home labs. The thought is, well, why hasn't anybody else hired you? Wow, if you're great in doing all this stuff, why are you available? So, but what I'll say is, do the things you like to do, regardless of whether it gets you the job or not. If you really want to explore that, if that's something that's of interest to you, my suggestion is go ahead and do it. The presentation of it is within a cover letter, or mention it in your resume, but it's in a cover letter or some other document that you can use as support for your resume. I don't think you spend a lot of time talking about how you built out the home lab, but you need to put it in a place that allows you to demonstrate it to someone who might find that to be of interest. I'm always saying that side projects, additional hobbies, those things demonstrate that you're not just going to work and coming home. But I'm also now shifting my mindset, because as the mother of two, being home with them and managing, family life, I don't have time to set up a home lab. And if I wanted a job, well, what would that mean for me? But what they're looking to see beyond the home lab is, what other things are you doing to ensure continuous learning? How are you demonstrating that you have a true interest in this? And by continuing to teach you, you can apply what you're learning. So if it's a home lab, great. But I also think that there are things like volunteering in different organizations that I advocate strongly for and talking to people on Twitter and showing some of the things there, using social media to your benefit, some of the things you're doing directly. So I really feel like a home lab is just a start, but there are a ton of things that you could do.
Yeah, I'd add on to that comment that in my point of view, or my opinion, the home lab is more about you learning the skills and then being able to demonstrate how those skills apply to the role, and less about the actual home lab. It's about you saying that you understand how networking works. You understand how to reverse engineer something. You're proficient in doing this, to show like you haven't had experience at a formal job, but this is what you're doing to be proficient in the skills that the employer's asking for, and less about the home lab. It could be hack the box. It could be whatever. And then showing that these are the skills that you learned, and this is how you're using it to transform into a competency that you can then translate to that role and what that hiring manager is looking for.
Exactly. And to echo what you both are saying, it's more of like, I call it like you're creating your own little mini internship. So, as there's not a lot of internship opportunities out there for people looking to break in. And some people have full-time jobs and can't just leave their job and go into be an intern, or leave taking care of their kids and go be an intern somewhere. So you're setting it up so that you are gaining a little bit of experience to do what Jules is talking about and what Chris is talking about in terms of the actual experience. Yes. So Paul says here, yes, if you're doing a home lab, do write-ups on what you're doing and what the lab is about. So that's really the goal of it. A couple other comments that came through. I definitely want to make sure that I am shouting everybody out. Michael Reeves, we shouted you out. Paul, obviously, hello from Vegas. I don't know who this is, but hey to Vegas. What's happening in Vegas? Paul says, yep, the Christmas holiday is going to be a pause again for the greatness that is breaking into cyber. Is Christmas on a Thursday?
Christmas is, we're not doing it Christmas week. Aww. But we're doing it the week after.
That's sad. Okay, whole cyber human family. Follow our awesome family members on YouTube. Thank you so much, Paul. Paul is amazing. Steve Upshaw. Hey, Steven. Thanksgiving was awesome. He is viewing us from San Diego. Tia is in Hawaii. Wow. We want some invitations. Michael is in Kansas. Michael Reeves is in Kansas. Sterling says he's watching from San Diego. Is it appropriate to reach out directly to a CISO about a job position instead of a hiring manager?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Can I say yes?
Go for it.
I want to say yes, because you're not reaching out to them about hiring you specifically. You're reaching out to them that you saw the role and you're expressing interest, and then having them pass it on. The expectation is not that they're going to talk to you about the role, yes. Is that they would just pass you on.
I agree.
There are CISOs who would love for people who really wanted to take a job to come to them so that they could kind of walk them into HR. So yes, I suggest that. The other thing though is when doing it, trying to be as humble and as respectful as possible, right? So I wouldn't keep following up. Let's assume that they're busy. But what I would also say is anytime there's a job and you have a connection to someone in the organization, you want to leverage that person to get into the organization. I've been able to help people just in terms of my network and saying, I vouch for this person. So any role you see, if you know the CISO or have a friend who knows the CISO, definitely see if you can, if they can make a connection, but also if you can get your resume in front of the CISO directly. There are a lot of issues with HR pipeline and how a resume gets into a system.
Yeah.
If you can go around that, you're better.
You want to go around it. I think we had a whole podcast just talking about how to circumvent ATS systems. Because as a person who sits on the other side of an ATS, I'm telling you all, especially folks trying to break into the industry, it is a complete waste of your time. Not a complete waste because some people have applied and have gotten jobs, but I would highly recommend that you spend your time networking, social media, all that stuff versus applying to jobs online because it's like, you're just in there with hundreds of people and the systems rank. Yep. They rank people, all the new systems nowadays, they rank you aligned to the role. And if you're not, aligned, you end up as number 57 in a batch of 100. So it just doesn't even pay. Okay, Sterling. And to add on to what Jules is saying, companies, especially large companies and small companies, they will pay your internal referrals. So not the CISOs. CISOs are too high up. They make enough money. They're not going to get paid. But the folks on the bottom, another thing people need to realize, use your peers.
Yes.
A lot of times the friends, the people on your level are going to know, oh, so-and-so just resigned, give me a resume or whatever. Like you want to be kind of in that inner circle that Naomi tends to talk about of people that are like, oh, I know such and such, they could get into a role, they're available, or so-and-so just quit before it even hits the job boards. Like, yep. By the time it gets to LinkedIn, a lot of these roles are already filled.
Completely.
I have a question about that to you too. For referrals where you don't know someone, so they're reaching out to you on LinkedIn, how do you communicate that to the recruiter or the hiring manager with regards to the weight that you place on that referral?
So I'll answer I wouldn't refer personally. Like if I was in a company, I'm not going to refer somebody that I don't know or that somebody hasn't vouched. Somebody hasn't said, oh, Chris is good, put him in. Or whoever, because at the end of the day, that's kind of tied to me. And if you are one of these people, so another thing when it comes to internal bonuses for folks that don't know, a lot of the times, like the person has to stay for a certain period of time, the individual has to stay, like there's things tied to that. So if this person happens to be a flake and they show up and I get paid and I got to pay the money back, or they don't, or they turn over in 6 weeks and I don't even know who this is. Somebody's like, oh, Renee referred them. Like, I don't know who that is. So I don't, unless there's somebody that's vouched, I don't necessarily do that. However, I do know of other people who, some of these big, large companies, they can put people into the pipeline and not know them. And it's perfectly fine. And they can just put a person in. But me personally, if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, can you put me in here? I'm not responding to that. I don't know this person.
Know you. Yep. I will take the time actually if I think their resume is good enough to meet with them. Because I'm also a hiring manager and I work with a lot of CISOs and typically have heard of all the roles that could possibly, if there's somebody I've spoken to who they might be a good fit for, I will then meet with them. In that interview, it's more about character, actually. It's, did they come prepared? Did they speak, clearly? Do I feel like I would be able to confidently put them in front of, my network? Because I kind of feel like there really is great talent out there. And I used to work at Yahoo Hot Jobs. I very much have recruited in the past. So I kind of can tell who's a good fit and who's not At least I think so. And so if I get a good feeling, I'll at least, but I won't say there's a personal referral. I'll say, such and such sent me their resume. I've also had a chance to speak to them. I think it would be worth it for you to speak to them as well.
And to circle back on what you said, Jules, that's a good point. If they're coming to me as like, hey, Renee, I'm a recruit, I know you recruit in the industry. Can you move me? Can you, are there opportunities out there for me or whatever the case is? Definitely I will respond or look at the information or point them to different people. But if I was working at a company per se, and they said, oh, can you put me in for this job, or can you be my recommendation for this particular job, and I don't know them, that's where it's like, no.
Yeah, I take a similar approach to Jules, where I would want to talk to them, but then I'd also assess the level of confidence or how well I know them when I do pass them on. Like, hey, this is someone that just reached out. They seem like a good fit. Versus, hey, this is someone that I've known to be a really good person and to have good results in former companies, and kind of weigh that leveling there, because you're, as you said, it's your reputation that's kind of attached to it. So if it's someone that you don't know, you kind of just say, they reached out, they seem good. It goes in your pile, but I don't expect it to be at the top of your pile.
Agreed.
Right. That's exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. Okay, so let's see. Paul, this is in response to what Jules was saying earlier. Yes, you have to do the work. The hands-out are the resources people offer. Don't expect a magical badge for free. Our worksheet is designed to create a continuous learning process for anyone who does it. If you can't commit to a simple learning plan, is cyber really for you, or anything?
His energy is everything, Paul. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So Paul is referring to the kind of training plan that we created in that nonprofit that we mentioned. So kind of goes through, offers them a sequential level of training from 0 to hero in the spaces that they might seem fine for, based on the free training that they get. So for example, veterans get access to a lot of different trainings from different companies. So if they fit a skill set and they want to go in a certain area, we'll refer them to those additional trainings, so that they come prepared to a company and said, these are all the different trainings that I've done, and this is why I would be a good fit for your organization.
Right.
Completely true.
Yeah.
Completely true.
Paul's org is awesome. So Michael Reeves says, from a candidate's perspective, what holds more weight, a college degree or certification? We haven't had this question in a long time.
Ooh, okay. Let me see. I want to say this nicely. I think certifications that's a business. And there are a lot of companies that have great reputations. And I strongly suggest some certs if you don't have a college degree. So if you don't have one, certs help you. What I want to say is, I believe it's on the totality of the candidate's background. I think the decision isn't either or. But what I will tell you is, the people who have disappointed me most, and I've been hiring now for the last 7 years, have tons of certs. Why? You're studying alone, or maybe you did a group study. You're reading books, you're taking information in, you got it down, you move to the next cert, you do it again. Those people tend not to be able to work with other people, tend not to be able to break down and analyze information, provide good reporting. And what I find is that those with like a litany of certs behind their names are focused so much on the technical, they miss the soft skill pieces, which then makes it hard for them to be retained, to be brought from internship into full-time roles. So a college degree is no longer just about whether you can get that first job out of college. You learn a lot about life and how to work with people. Perhaps you stay on campus. You learn how to balance different priorities. You learn how to do a number of things at the very same time while learning independence. And even if you went to a community college or technical vocational school, 2-year school, those are also places where if you're in a classroom setting, you've got to work with other people, taking information, and you've got to apply it and share it out. certifications versus a college degree. If I were to be asked and you could only do one thing, I would say a college degree, because I believe that if you can pass with a college degree, you have the aptitude and the ability to learn and you can get a cert. But sometimes I find if you've only got certs and you haven't done the work, you don't need a college degree, but you haven't done the work to actually learn how to communicate and work with other people, that's where I see people struggle. And it becomes a little bit harder to get them a job and then have them stay on.
Yeah, I think the period in which they acquired the certs becomes very critical. If someone has 10 certs that they got in the past 6 months, that to me is a potential red flag. I mean, it could be someone that's unemployed and that's their situation, but they have to have the soft skills to be able to communicate that. Yes. If I had to choose, being someone that does have a master's degree, again, I'm in favor of formal education, but I don't want it to be a gatekeeper.
Yes.
I want the bachelor requirement, the master requirement to be removed, and instead put, like, we consider certs and formal education as as something that we prefer to have and not required to have. Okay. That would be my goal, to open up the hiring pipeline, to access more diversity, to be more inclusive of individuals that might not have the financial background or access to certifications or formal education, and to kind of have that equity for everyone that's coming into the process.
Right. And I will add that, again, from the HR side, unfortunately, companies are still requiring, or unfortunately, however you look at it, some companies, especially typically the ones that have these pipelines of college, like entry level positions, internships, things like that, they tend to, well, one, they require a college degree or that you're in college. Two, they go and hire from college campuses.
Yeah.
So they will go. So a lot of the times they're just like, I can't get an internship. I can't get, it's like, yeah, because they just went to, whatever university and they hire 20 people from that school, or they pick 3 or 4 schools and says, okay, I'm going to hire people from these schools. And the reason why they do that is either you have alumni that are on, in the leadership capacity, and or they've invested in these schools. So they've invested in the universities. They help to put together the curriculum. They're working with the students, so they're invested in these universities and colleges, and 2-year ones at that as well. So they're going to go where the investment is. So they're going to go back to that place. So, from an HR side, what I see is it's like
autopilot.
It's almost autopilot. And to be honest, nowadays it's so easy, so much easier to get the college degree that, you're just putting up a barrier. Like by the time you get 10 certs, you could have gotten through, because now it's all remote. It's not a situation where before you had to have, you understood when a parent, a single parent or whatever, had to go to a physical location at night, in the evening, put in these sacrifices and pay. It's those time, money, all this other stuff. Nowadays, there's so many online institutions that you can, actually get it accomplished. So that's the story from the HR perspective. And another thing is, a lot of the times they'll bring you in if you are allowed to get in without the degree, the promotion, a lot of the times when you're trying to get that promotion, you got all these other people that have college degrees. And so the step up to management, if that's what you want to do, is going to be a challenge. So
I've also seen. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. No, go ahead.
I've also seen, like, at director levels, there's a ceiling where even if you got in without a degree, that you can't go up without a master's.
Yeah.
And it's like an unwritten rule, but that the company operates on that.
Right.
And
they'll
offer to pay for it. They'll offer to pay for some of it. So they'll say, well, why not get it? It's a benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked in organizations, especially because most of the organizations I've worked in up until the last couple of years were these big, large, Fortune 100 companies. And every once in a blue moon, they would hire somebody without one. But this person, it was so like over the top in terms of the experience that it was just like, well, we'll make this one exception. But if you're, big four, like certain places, you got to have a degree. You have to have a certain cert. I mean, there was in one org I asked, I was in there recruiting for audit for their auditors, and they were like, no, everyone has to have a CPA or a CFA, whatever it was. And they were like, because we tell our regulators, we tell the people when we go in to do their books that everyone here has this particular credential. And the only way to get that is having a degree. But go ahead.
The marketing of it is different than what the actual experience is. So for instance, there were announcements by the Big Four that they no longer required 4-year degrees, except it doesn't trickle down to their HR system, which still filters out the people who don't have degrees. So sometimes you'll hear an organization tout that it no longer matters, and it actually does in ways that you won't be able to see.
Right. Right, exactly. So there's a lot going on with that. Too bad James isn't here because he's the he's the man that talks about not having a degree. So it would be interesting to hear what he had to say. Okay, so we already talked about this comment. Brooklyn 29 is in Springfield, Virginia. Brooklyn 29, you're supposed to be in Brooklyn. Oh my God. So let's see. Roman says he is here from Nashville. Hey, Roman from Nashville. Okay, so Paul says you nailed it, Chris. Who better knows what their business needs than the C-suite, and they are humans. Just don't do something to pressure them on the topic of job descriptions. What I mean by this is making a meaningful connection with them, meaning the CISOs talk to CISOs and same with executives. So Paul, I totally understand what you're saying, like kind of what Jules said, and Chris, you don't want to pressure. Like if you send your resume or you reach out to a CISO, they don't respond immediately, give it a little bit of time, maybe do a second follow-up, but like pressuring them, like, where are you? All that kind of stuff. It's automatically going to be like a hard no.
Okay. What is, just in your experience, what's the best and the worst experience you've had in helping a candidate get a role?
Let's see. I have not had like a ton of, I'm trying to think if I've had any bad experiences. Like usually the folks that I help out are, they do what I ask them to do.
Yep.
So they already have a level of like, I give the advice and then they come back and they say, I did this. Now, what do I do next?
Right.
And so you have confidence in them that, okay, like you told this person to do X, Y, Z and they did it.
Yep.
And so they get referred on. I can't say that I've had a person, I would have to think about, someone who's really been, like didn't work out for something egregious. Like I'm trying to think. I don't have any off the top of my head that I can think of.
Chris?
I can't actually think of any either. Well, not true. There's a lot of people that are on the surface of those types of conversations where they reach out and they have high expectations or demands for help when they don't know you. And even if you share resources, you're like, well, what do I need to do to get a job? And it comes across as very rude. And sometimes I understand it could be cultural upfrontness. It could be English isn't their first language, so it maybe didn't come across right. But there is a consistency in the younger folks to be more direct and upfront with their expectations. And it's like, I just gave you a list of 10 resources for you to check out. And like, you're already asking me about step 10 when you haven't even done step 1. Like, as this podcast has been going on for years, as I've been very public, I get a lot of those. And it's like, hey, like, I have a copy and paste of a bunch of resources. I have articles on all this that I've written over the years. Like maybe a little bit of research on your end if you're really passionate about this. Could go a long way.
I would agree.
So
They want to
funny.
get the answer and the job like immediately.
Chris, I think you come off too nice. I don't get a whole bunch of like they may.
By the time they talked to Renee, they finished his twice.
Right. I already read your book. I watched all the podcasts. You're amazing. Then I'm like, oh, okay. Like, what can I do? So that's too funny. That is hilarious. Yeah, and maybe if they do come across like that, because I've been a recruiter for so long, I probably just delete. Like I'm just move on.
Well, yeah, I do that with job recruiters that like send me for help desk requirements or
like,
a 3-month contract to move across the country for an on-site role. Seriously? Like for 3 months, you want someone to move across the country?
Yeah.
Or I still get like marketing assistant roles. I'm like, really? It's been enough time. I'm not even in that field anymore.
It's so funny. I was talking to I was on a call the other day with one of my clients on a conference, and we were talking about resources, how to find candidates. So this is about sourcing candidates, looking for candidates, and where they are. Mm-hmm. And something came up about Dice and job boards and stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, I think that those like people that go to not to say people, it's not a bad place to go, but it's just old resumes. I was like, who's putting their resume on Monster anymore? Like, or Dice. Like that's just an old resume. So the people reaching out to you, Chris and Jules, with those old assistant jobs from like 10 years ago, it's like, oh, they're looking at a resume from 10, 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
I think it's even worse, right?
Yes.
I think it's even worse because what you're doing is, even if it was from 10 years ago, you're not even looking at it. No. You're just doing like a search for a keyword and then mass emailing it. So like I've had to remove like help desk, like all my roles for help desk, like remove them from my resume so that like I don't get asked for them. And still they're like, oh, I found you on LinkedIn. You want this help desk role? No.
It's the mass spammers. I have a CISO friend that gets called for like tech, like help desk type. He was what was after the help desk? It was desktop, right? So desktop type, like infrastructure stuff that he hasn't done in years. And I was just like, yeah, they just mass spamming. Like they find it's not even a human. It's just straight bots spamming you. That's what's going on.
And I think that another interesting thing that happened to me is when I was looking, I think there was a point like just before I started the company, I wanted to be a BISO. And that was very early on when there was this one BISO role. And like my resume had like, I've been in sales, I've been in marketing, I did all kinds of things in influence, I was leadership. And they were like, you're underqualified for this role. And I was like, basically my resume didn't have any of the things like the certs, like I didn't have a CISSP, I didn't have, so they I was filtered out. It was the hiring manager who told me later on that they found my resume and was like, whatever happened? I was like, they said I was underqualified. So
yeah, because it's not a human. Like, or if it's literally like scanning for keywords, that's why we say circumvent the ATS, because a manager is gonna see, oh, this person has all the skills that a BISO needs. I can train her on the other stuff.
Yes.
She has the business skills, she has the communication, she has this. That's what I need in a BISO. I don't need a technical heads down person. I need somebody that's gonna bridge the gap.
That's exactly.
So yeah. All right, so Requiem, who is in San Fran, says, I've been finding Rex using LinkedIn recommendations, using LinkedIn to find networking group connections, reaching out to the recruiters, other relevant connections, then shooting friendly messages to inquire about the role, no response. So kind of what we said, we've been talking about this, and I know that we have Requiem. I know you made this comment a little bit further up, but use your if you're in the groups and stuff, you want to go directly to like the hiring leaders, hiring managers, and you won't necessarily know every single hiring manager or leader, but if you have a target, so this is what I would tell people to do. If they really know that they want to be in like a certain 5 companies or 10 companies or whatever, stalk those companies, stalk the people in those companies, like get super familiar with those people in those companies, and then use social media to join conversations. So if somebody says, hey, you want to join Google, for example, and Google's doing something interesting or whatever, and there's some comments, then you jump in and you make your comment on top of that. So like you're maximizing social media. So that when you do ping the person and ask a question, they're like, oh, I saw so-and-so, I saw Requiem, he was in my comments saying, and he made a valuable comment, a couple times, so you want to warm the person up to who you are and really maximize social media for your degree. Because people who reach out to me who say, like if we're in the chats and I'm reading off what you said, I think even Paul, for example, we started connecting from Paul joining our live streams. I think that's how we all connected. Yep. Like Paul would be in here making comments every week, every time. And then we're like, oh, who's Paul? We got to talk to him. Like he's in here making all the great comments. So it's kind of the same thing. Like we want, and then some of the folks that have gotten jobs after we've given out advice and they're here every week and they come back again. We're like, oh, so-and-so got the job. That's awesome. So obviously now if this person reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I know who that is versus a random, someone. And again, sometimes you can't be on our lives, right? So you're on and you're talking to us and you're saying, hey, after the fact, I watched your show. I think it was awesome. I read your book and I watched your show. I mean, that's going to also go a long way versus a blind person that is not, you're reaching out to them and they're not going to, and they haven't responded. And I know that some of these people don't have books and podcasts and stuff like that, but they usually, hopefully, are posting stuff on LinkedIn that you can respond to.
Look at their activity. If they haven't posted in 3 years, sending them a message on LinkedIn, they're probably not there. I mean, they created a profile, but they're not active. So take that into consideration as well.
I find for like the raising your hand that you're available is actually easier on Twitter. Because even in the InfoSec, like all the people I follow, there are constantly posts for, oh, I've got this role, or does anyone know anybody who can do X? So follow LinkedIn and Twitter and join groups. There's certain groups on LinkedIn that, people in the same space. So I'm a part of a number of women's groups, but also if you can join like some general cybersecurity groups, you get to mingle with CISOs more directly as well. Find groups where there's CISOs mingled in with the general population as well. That's a good place.
Slacks, Discords, all those different types of groups. Yep.
All those groups for sure. Okay, and Requiem said it was about job recs. When he said recs, it wasn't recommendations, it was job recs. Okay, so let's go back up here. Tons of comments and engagement today, which is fantastic. Somebody said, amen, Jules. I'm just trying to get back to where we were. Okay. Okay, if you don't have a degree, so Scott's follow-up, if you don't have a degree, which certs hold the most weight in Jules' opinion? So Jules, that's on you.
It depends on what role you're looking to fill. So when I talk about Scott, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. The reason why is some of the certs are tied to different organizations. And what I found is there's a receptiveness for some organizations over another. I don't want to put any of them down. So, but there are some, any ones, if you're going to risk management that help you with leadership, management, operations, those certs are good. Technical skills, at least get you Security Plus. I mean, it just demonstrates you have an interest in the thing. And then if you're looking to get into like pen testing, there are specific ones. So I can share that offline. I just don't want to do it online and like.
All I would say is figure out where you want to go in cyber and find the certs that most closely align with it. So getting a cert that is focused to a pen test, but you want to be audit is not going to help you. So there's a certification map. You can use that as a guide to kind of help you focus your research and your learning.
Yes, I agree with them both. Scott says he will. Thank you. Requiem responded, he's reached out to cyber project managers, VPs, recruiters, checked for activity, but could definitely be more involved in the groups and comments on Twitter. So yeah, Requiem, you wanna get involved in it when they'll notice you more when you are making the comments.
Yes.
So they put a post up, you make a comment, they respond, other people see it. And what I love also about the commenting component is that other CISOs, CISOs are friends with CISOs, managers are friends with managers. If I see something Jules posts and I write something, and then somebody, like, say, for example, they're looking for a recruiting, contractor, somebody to help them with recruiting, and I make a comment, they'll reach out to me and be like, oh, I see that this is what you're doing, and you made a comment on Jules's, you made a really good I agree with what you said. Let's talk. I've gotten business that way.
That a lot of the business that I get now, I mean, I'm working with, the UN and Pinterest and some major organizations, and it literally is off the strength of my LinkedIn. I mean, quite literally, someone will see what I've said and go, oh my God, you share a perspective. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. You're selling yourself in the same way we're selling ourselves for our businesses, but you're selling yourself personally. It's the same idea. You want to attract people to you.
That's the thing. You want to be the honey. You want them coming to you. You want it to be like, oh, and then another thing you can do, which I think Paul is fantastic at this. He's so funny because he would say big sister of cyber. I was like, that's so funny. And he would call Naomi. I forget what title he used for Naomi, but he had all these different titles for us. And he would tag us. And a lot of times people tag me on stuff and I don't even pay attention, but because he would say big sister of cyber and he would tag me, it would make me laugh. I'm like, okay, what is Paul saying? And this is before we became like, now he's family. But before it was just like, who is this guy Paul? What is he talking about? It was so funny and so interesting and so, engaging that you had no choice but to jump in. So you want people attracted to you. So that's why you want to make the comments on there.
And one of the things that I want to interject right here is your LinkedIn, your resume, they're supposed to be marketing materials for your future, not your past. And all too often, LinkedIn profiles are about their past, what they did, but it doesn't connect with what they want. So if you show how your skills, your competencies from the past relate to your future role, people are going to like that when they see your profile. They're going to see that you can be this role. They can see that you're going to be a great BISO because you're aligning your sales to security or things like that. You're finding ways to connect it together. And that's where I think a lot of people lack is that marketing aspect in their LinkedIn and their resume.
Completely agree.
Maybe, Chris, you need to teach your class in that. Hint, hint. That should be part of the coaching program, the intro to the coaching program.
That is exactly true.
Because it's so true. I think people are, we wrote about it in the book. We talked about the people who've done it, but I think a step-by-step way of like, hey, folks, this is what you do. Maybe we'll have one of these LinkedIn Lives and we help somebody like step through that process.
I would love that.
Kind of like Jules mentioned, where she doesn't want to like call out a specific cert. I'm very hesitant to provide like specific guidance on like how to brand yourself for individuals because Jules' situation is different than mine, is different from yours. And saying something too generically could send someone the wrong way. So I always like to understand like what's their background, what are they passionate about, and then like tailor it to them. But we could do some general points.
No, I agree. I think we should, and I know it's the top of the hour, it's 2:00 Eastern. We should have something where we do, where we bring people on. You know how we had individually, we work with people on their resumes. Maybe this is like 2.0. This is the next component.
Maybe it's like the Shark Tank though, but we're really rounding them out. right? They gave us the pitch for why we should hire them, and then
Right.
we give the feedback back about what they should do.
What they should do. I love this.
You are shy about it, but I will tell someone how to brand themselves. I'm happy to.
Yeah, she's a marketing executive. Exactly. Marketing exec. All right, Jules, you're coming back. This is why
we're gonna have a Shark Tank version of Breaking Into Cybersecurity with Jules.
Okay, folks. All right, it's 2:01. Let me get through a couple more of these comments, and then I know everybody has to get back to work. Sterling says, great comments. Thank you all. I feel a strong sense of relief because, like Paul said too, that human interaction is key. We shouldn't have stage fright talking with anyone in cyber. That's one thing I've learned while taking this approach. Thanks again for your detailed and specific answers. I really appreciate it. You are welcome, Sterling. Paul says, Jules, yes, capital YES. Certifications for one needs to get reset back to bragging rights versus a job requirement. So very good point. Steve Upshaw, who is always here, says, I have learned way more practical knowledge regarding cybersecurity via certifications than traditional schools, and I have traveled both paths. It's good to know. Good point. Brooklyn 29, amen to Jules in one of her many comments that she was making today. So amen on multiple things. Aaron Frank says certifications equal at best a minimal baseline knowledge of that area. If you have many, then you are possibly a jack of many trades and master of nothing. Requiem soft skills are great. I don't believe that college teaches them. In my experience, it only comes with on-the-job experience. Degree kids are the most useless teammates. Lord have mercy. Well, maybe it is the type of degree, because all degrees aren't created equally. Yes. All schools aren't created equally. So I get it. Like if you're in a school where you don't have a group project, like I think Jules and I are talking about, like when I was at NYU almost 20 years ago.
And you're 26.
Yeah, I know. Plus.
Prodigy. She's a prodigy.
Yeah, I'm a prodigy. I was a baby. We had group projects. Like every class was a group project. You had to get together. You could not, you could either take it on and do it, but you had a group project, like almost every single class. And I think it was mandated by, again, organizations that came in, the PwCs, all those different companies that were like, we need students that come out and know how to work with other people. Like they can't be in a box by themselves. They have to be able to work together. So this is what your class is. And so the classes reflected that. So you always had a group project, and it was always a slacker. And there's always a person that did more. It's just like a microcosm of work. So we knew completely. We knew when you get out, it's like, okay, group project. Okay, you're going to be working in teams. Like that's how it was. So unfortunately, Requiem, I guess some of the schools, if you're just, checking boxes or taking tests, then it's a little bit different. Michael Reeves says, I was told get a job with a degree and use that job to pay for certs.
That works.
That works too. Brooklyn says, great points. Paul says, a degree, if you don't have work-life experience, would be viable. I would agree also, though, to the point a degree is becoming a great thing with how colleges are finally restructuring IT and cyber in their programs. And that's true. A lot of veterans, you have so much on-the-job experience. Like, to me, that's where I really am, like, if a company's like, you must have a degree. And if you're looking at someone who's a veteran, who's done all this work for 15, 20 years, and you're like, you need a degree, I think, that's where I have, like, the challenge. But for especially brand spanking newbies, meaning like, just got out of high school, whatever, what else are you doing? Like, you're not a veteran. You don't have an excuse. Shayna says some cyber degrees require you to get certs while earning a degree, which is great. Mine does. So that's also good. Michael says, for his current job, Paul, my years at a fast food chain helped me get my current role on top of my degree with knowledge as well. So, again, Aaron, I think we prefer a combination of either college, certs, and experience to meet the requirement would be most beneficial to potential employees and companies. That's the trifecta. Brent, hey, Brent Helpless says compensation often rely on education, certs, or keywords to rate well enough to capture the talent. It's a catch-22 scenario. That's completely true. That is true. So Requiem wants to know if WGU is where Shayna is getting her degree from. And Shayna says, no, she's getting it from the University of Northwestern Louisiana, because WGU also has, for the cyber undergrad, you get certs. So you pass the cert, you pass the class.
And you get coaching. Sorry.
Yes, that's cool too. Paul says, shows that they have value in the hard and soft skill sets you obtain. I do agree on let the company pay for the certs. Yep. If you could get into a company, please let them pay for it. Brooklyn 29 says, thanks for the shout out. I'm trying to get through all of this. Degrees are important because they force you to study some topics that you will never know on your own. That's what Muhammad says. Scott says New York City subs rocks unless you're taking the L. Subways. All right, we have to go, everybody. Thank you so much. Come back again next week. We will be here, and I love the engagement. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. See everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.